Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode, I think, 28 of GamerVision. I'm Jeff from Just One More Level, and we have Tony from Procedurally Generated. How are you doing, Tony?
I am doing fantastic tonight. It is a great night to talk about video games.
There was a lot. There was a lot that has gone from Microsoft, Square Enix, Capcom. All of them have just they decided that this was the week that they're going to be making all kinds of announcements from the Microsoft showcase, Capcom showcase, and then Square Enix doing their thing where they're milking Final Fantasy VII
And
to
Square
death.
Enix is the only one I haven't had a chance to see yet.
Um, well, it's the Final Fantasy VII 25th anniversary celebration. And they had a lot of things that featured that cast of characters, which for better or worse, um, they continue to milk into the ground, and they say that it's because the fans they're doing it for the fans, and they appreciate all the fans.
They're trying to see how
Um,
many different versions of Final Fantasy VII they can put out
yeah,
in one console generation.
that's and like all sorts of like mobile games, and like they finally announced part two of Final Fantasy VII remake, which it's no longer called remake, it's called rebirth, and blah blah blah. Um, but kicking off this week was the Microsoft showcase. For the most part, they had about what, an hour and a half, 2 hours of just game after game after game after game. Lots of Game Pass announcements, lots of them. Um, you know, I currently have about 2 hours. I have about 2 years worth of Game Pass Ultimate lined up due to the Xbox All Access thing for the Series X that I got. So I am very excited to see what all they're going to be bringing to Game Pass, which you know I feel like Microsoft definitely knocked it out of the park for the most part. Uh, I went into the show just wanting to see more Starfield, and I left the show wishing maybe they should have taken a little bit more time. And I'm sure there's going to be people out there that are going to, oh well, a PlayStation fanboy, blah blah blah. Um,
Yeah, the reaction to Starfield was very mixed. I was initially kind of excited, but then the more I started watching, I was like, this feels like No Man's Sky, but with a
yeah,
Bethesda skin on top of it. And I'm not a big fan of Bethesda's games anyway.
like
So I'm not super excited about Starfield. I never really have been, but it looks kind of neat. But
yeah, there's some some cool concepts and stuff that will be in the game. I'll save my ranting for later in the episode where we kind of talk about some of our disappointments as far as like the stuff that happened throughout the week. Um, but I actually kind of had like I was going into the show not expecting anything of Redfall, and I left the show. I can't really see my hands, but and and left the show um, more excited about Redfall, and Starfield was the exact opposite. I went in, you know, excited and amped up, and then was left disappointed. Um, for the most part, like I'm really excited to see more of these co-op shooters, like the Left 4 Dead's, the Back 4 Bloods, which you can kind of see on the screen behind me. Um, so I'm excited to see more of those style of games where you can just like buddy up with people, go through the
yeah,
campaign. One thing I
yeah,
saw is that the story is tied to the host, not
that's
the
fairly
overall thing.
common for a lot of those games. I mean, that's not unusual. I know a lot of people seemed outraged about
And
that, but I think Back for Blood is the same way.
yeah,
Um, I mean that's not unusual, especially in story-driven multiplayer games, because they don't want the story to get like out of sync. If you're
yeah,
playing here on your system and then you go to a friend's system who's like 5 chapters ahead of you, and then you play through a
yeah,
few chapters and then you come back, it would have a hard time trying to figure out where you need to go. Do you need to go back to
yeah.
where you were? Do you need to go back to where you were, play
Mm.
up to where you were playing with your friends, skip that stuff, and then go to the next thing? That just makes it a nightmare.
And with a game like Back for Blood, with all the card mechanics, the upgrades, all that kind of stuff that you can do to the weapons and just your overall abilities and stuff, like there's a lot that the game would then have to rebalance, because if you had played so many chapters ahead and you had like legendary status equipment, then you're essentially going back several acts or chapters. There's all kinds of balancing stuff that
Yeah,
becomes a nightmare. Um, but yeah, I'm just excited to see more of these co-op, campaign shooters and stuff. It seems like we were losing out on those like Left 4 Dead style games, and I'm glad to see more
we're
things
seeing a
coming.
lot of those now
Uh,
coming back.
which before we were filming, you pointed out the Warhammer game coming.
That is the
Uh,
one I am most looking forward to.
so definitely, there's a lot of options out there. But yeah, I was just kind of surprised, like seeing the Redfall stuff. I was like, oh, okay, I need to kind of put this on my radar. But what would you say as far as like the Microsoft event? I mean, there's so many things that were announced this week. Can't possibly go over all of them, but as much as we want to try. Uh, but for the Microsoft show, like what,
For
anything that
me,
stood out?
there were a couple of things that I really really liked. First, we're seeing the return of Forza, Forza proper, not the
Yeah,
Horizon stuff, and it's just called.
Motorsport.
Looks like it's just called Forza Motorsport. They're not putting the 8 on the end of it, which is what a lot
Mm.
of people had expected. So this feels like they're sort of rebooting Forza in a way, and it looks gorgeous. Like those games are always really good looking, but Forza Motorsport just looks so good. I
The
like a lot of the
graphical
stuff they're doing with
powerhouse.
the the weather, the day night cycle stuff they've got going on, and just I'm just blown. This was the game that I'm like, okay, maybe it's about time I go ahead and upgrade the Xbox, because I'm still using an Xbox One, and all of these things are going to be available for Xbox One, as
Yeah.
well as the Series X and Series S. But the ray tracing stuff on that, showing off like the reflections of other cars in your car, and things like that were just really really pretty to look at. And I've been playing a lot of Forza Horizon 5, so this is really sort of I'm in that Forza frame of mind at the moment where I have never been before. And then the other thing that just really got my attention was the trailer for Plague Tale Requiem, which will
Oh
be
yeah.
out later this year. I've played through the first Plague Tale a couple of different times, once on the Xbox and once on the Switch, actually, using the streaming uh, version on that. And I love that game so much, and this one just looks so much better. Um,
So I don't remember seeing. Is Forza Motorsport, is that going to be an XCloud game as well? Like, will you be able to play it like
I would
streaming or?
assume so. They didn't really talk about which ones were going to be available for streaming
Oh,
necessarily, but most of their stuff, if it's not day one, eventually comes to xCloud. And Forza Horizon 5 is on xCloud. It has been since launch, so I would figure this probably would as well.
yeah. So yeah, it's like Microsoft had a really good showing, and I one thing that I kept kind of going back to is that I really miss that E3 feel, just
Mm-hmm.
having Summer Games Fest and the State of Play and then Microsoft Showcase and Capcom and then Square Enix little thing, and uh, still nothing from Nintendo, which you know
There's a lot of rumors circulating right now about when their direct is going to be, and there's a lot of people saying the end of the month. I'm not going to hold in.
yeah,
Of course, a lot of people were like, it's going to be the 16th, or it's going to be the 14th,
which
one of those two dates. And then they're like, oh no, it's been delayed because of some stuff, and so now it's going to be on the
yeah,
29th. And I'm just like, I
all
don't want to
those
hear those rumors. I don't care. Just when Nintendo says there's going to be a direct, there's going to be a direct, and that's all you can rely on.
yeah, all the insiders and stuff, they're just grasping at straws and hoping that one of them turns out to be correct.
Yeah.
That way they can be like, ah, see, I told you, I'm the insider you should trust. Um, but outside of the Microsoft event, like with E3, just everything being so concise, just everything organized into 3 or 4 days. Like I
Hmm.
miss that because things are now
Yeah,
spread
I do
out
too.
so much, and it's just kind of it's the wild west of game announcements because like it's just everything's happening all kind of at the same time, and it's at least with E3, you would have like a Microsoft convention and or conference, and like you get all those announcements, and then you have the Sony, and then you'd have Nintendo's, you know, their stuff like their Treehouse and all that. But it was all very structured. It was very established,
Yeah,
and
you could
like
almost set your watch by what times every company was going to have their
yeah.
presentations.
And like with this, it's like, well, Square Enix's thing was just celebrating Final Fantasy VII. It was 15 minutes. Capcom's thing ballooned to, I think someone said like 2 hours or like roughly 2 hours if you were like the
Yeah,
pre-show stuff.
Capcom's main presentation was about 30 minutes long, and it was all Monster Hunter and
Yeah, yeah, a little bit of Street
Resident
Fighter.
Evil.
Oh, no Street Fighters.
Just a little bit of Street Fighter. It was all stuff we had seen before, with the exception of their co-op shooter thing that I don't really know. It's
Oh
all
yeah.
about robots and um,
Um, and then like Microsoft's thing was an hour and a half to
yeah, it was
two-ish
90
hours.
minutes. Yeah.
So like it's just kind of all over the place, but Capcom, I think for the most part, really didn't need to do anything. Just kind of like what you said, like it was basically Monster Hunter, which cool, more Monster Hunter stuff. Like I don't really think an entire showcase needed to be for that, and of course
Well,
I'm
I
not
mean,
really.
Monster Hunter is a big deal for Capcom. It is,
Oh
it
yeah,
shuts
yeah,
down Japan when a new Monster Hunter game comes out. And
yeah,
the stuff they were showing off is really cool. There's a lot of cool returning monsters and returning areas that we haven't seen since like the days of the PSP. Um, but yeah, I'm not
well,
as hyped for Monster Hunter as I have been in the past. I'm probably going to get this. I'm probably going to play it. I've played every Monster Hunter since Try. Um,
it
so
seems like I mean the trajectory for the franchise is going up. Like it's becoming more and more popular. More and more
yeah,
people outside of Japan are diving on or diving in. Um, but like one thing, and I don't know if you're the same way with this, but I don't like it when Square Enix makes announcements of announcements. And Capcom made an announcement that they're going to be making an announcement about Dragon's Dogma, which
yeah.
I've heard some people say remake or possibly a sequel. Um, but ultimately, I'm excited to see them doing something with Dragon's Dogma. Like it was a good take on like an action RPG type of thing, almost Soulsborne esque. Uh, but I don't know what your thoughts are on announcements of announcements. But
I
I
mean, it's a thing. It's just like get ready. Here is when we're going to make our big
yeah
announcement. It's kind of just that save the date sort of thing, and you need to
yeah
kind of have some of that stuff. It's like when Nintendo does their, we're having a direct tomorrow. That's the same thing. That's the announcement of the
yeah.
announcement. Um, so it's not that I don't think it's that big a deal. I don't make any fuss about, hey, they just announced that they're going to make an announcement. Okay, yeah, that we kind of need to know some of that stuff.
Um,
You know who I thought was suspiciously quiet this year, and maybe it's because Nintendo hasn't had anything yet, but that's Platinum. Like they haven't announced anything,
yeah. Um,
and they're usually big time E3. Here's some big stuff that we're doing: Astral
yeah, because
Chain, Bayonetta 3. Um,
a lot of people are kind of wondering where Bayonetta 3 is.
I assume that will come with a direct, and we just have to know when Nintendo's direct is going to be.
I'm really hoping that Babylon's Fall didn't put too much of a black eye on Platinum because I feel like that's much more Square Enix's fault with
Yeah.
the pushing all kinds of like microtransactions and all kinds of different currencies and stuff to it, trying to make it a live or a games as a service game. Um,
Well,
but
I think once Bayonetta finally comes out, people will be like, "Oh yeah, Platinum Games is still,
yeah,
a big deal. They still make really good games."
just got to give
Um,
them away from Square Enix.
and it'll show the difference between what they do with Square Enix versus what they do with Nintendo. And
Yeah. Um, But kind of looking at you had mentioned with Monster Hunter PSP. This is kind of a delayed segue, um, but the remake. I think it's a remake of Crisis Core Final Fantasy
Yeah.
VII. Uh,
Crisis Core is getting the Final Fantasy VII remake sort of treatment. I saw a couple of
yeah,
screenshots, and the upgrade is very very nice.
yeah, and if I remember correctly, it's coming to everything: Switch, Xbox platforms, PlayStation, Steam, like
It's
everywhere.
coming to Switch. Really, I hadn't heard that, or I
Uh,
hadn't. I've not seen any of the trailers. I just saw some screenshots.
I think I saw the Switch logo at the end, and of course they're calling it instead of remake. I guess they're wanting to stay away from sticking remake or remaster on things now. So instead of it being Final Fantasy Crisis Core remake, it's Final Fantasy Crisis Core reunion. Um, Not really sure why they're going with the reunion subtitle, but like I don't know if it's just like reintroducing Zack or Angeal and Genesis. Like I don't really
I
know,
mean, probably it's because these are characters that people haven't seen for a while.
but I'm really hoping that I saw the slot machine in the this reunion game. I'm really hoping that they retool it to where it's not so random. Like I hope that there's more control over when you use it versus just it happening.
Yeah, you are right. It is coming to everything, including Switch. So
Um, but yeah, so with Final Fantasy Crisis Core reunion, the announcement of something with Dragon's Dogma, and then Redfall, those were my biggest my favorite announcements coming out of this week's
the
stuff.
Final Fantasy VII game I'm looking forward to. Like I played Final Fantasy VII remake. I had not touched the whatever came after that. I'm not. I don't know that I'm super big on part two or part three, whatever
Yeah,
those are going to be.
Rebirth.
But the Final Fantasy VII I'm really looking forward to is Ever Crisis. Like that is what I
Yes,
thought the
yeah.
Final Fantasy VII remake was going to be, and that's what I want to play.
While I was watching that today, which is like a day behind, I think, of the actual showing of the 25th anniversary, when I saw Ever Crisis, my first thought was, this is what the fan base wanted
Mm-hmm.
when like yes, make it pretty, whatever, but Ever Crisis is that remake that everybody that I feel wanted to see Final Fantasy VII get treated as. Um, like the remake is cool, it's very pretty, but there's not a whole lot of gameplay there. It is very, very much like holding your hand and just dragging you through corridor after corridor after corridor. And like when I was seeing Ever Crisis, I was like, this is what like. See, you can do it. You do listen every once in a while, Square Enix. Like, I'm so glad that somebody in there is paying attention and actually like fighting for this stuff. Because like, I think from what I saw, it's like, I think it's turn based. I think you've got your party. I think it's like I think I saw three characters that you can control, and it's like that isometric like
Mm-hmm.
running around. Like I was just so excited for that, and gives me a glimmer of hope that there's people within Square Enix that are fighting for what the actual fans want. Um, but yeah, like I was blown away by that. That I was if it wasn't for Crisis Core getting the remake treatment, that was probably going to be one like in its place. Um, but yeah, like such a good thing to see. Um, Good on you, Square Enix. Like I'm glad that handing the torch over to other people.
But
Um,
my big thing right now, because with especially with Square Enix, is because I'm a Dragon Quest guy, so I'm just kind of standing at the window looking outside at everybody having fun with their
yeah.
Final Fantasy VII, and I'm not getting any information about the Dragon Quests that are coming. Dragon Quest
And
3,
there's a
Dragon
lot.
Quest 12. There is nothing. There is no information whatsoever coming from Square Enix about
Yeah.
any of those Dragon Quest projects, and that's what I want to see.
Which, the longer we go, kind of makes me wonder if any of them will hit this year.
I
Um,
doubt it. I seriously doubt it.
that's like it's unfortunate because they have like two or three Dragon Quest projects that are in the works. Um, I can't remember
I think there's three
is
right now.
because there's 12, which we know the logo. There's Dragon Quest 3, the
The
remake,
HD2
which
thing, and
looks
then there's that
awesome.
prequel to Dragon Quest 11.
So yeah, like they've got projects in the works, and I don't know if Square Enix is gonna wait for like the Tokyo Game Show to do something big for non-Final Fantasy projects because they have a lot of
Maybe,
things.
maybe during a direct we get some Final Fantasy. They're not Final Fantasy. Good grief, Dragon Quest 3. We won't
See,
get any Dragon
it's
Quest
on your
12
head.
stuff, but like Dragon Quest 3, maybe we get something.
Yeah,
I want Dragon Quest news. That's what I want.
yeah, and I mean, for the Dragon Quest fans out there, they've got three projects that they're just kind of dangling
Hmm.
those carrots and just like, all right, maybe this show. Oh, no, not that one. Oh, well, maybe this. Nope, nope, not that one. Um, but I don't know that might be one of your biggest disappointments of this week is the just lack of Dragon Quest stuff. But for me, it is definitely Starfield. Starfield is absolutely my biggest disappointment of this week.
Yeah.
Um, the game looks dull, boring, generic. Like they talked about this absolutely great character creator that they spent like 20 seconds, and it just looks like all the other character creation tools that is just everywhere at this point. Um, I I don't so I don't know if you remember the beginning of the PS3 360 era where everything that was next gen was just some sort of combination of grays and browns.
Yeah.
Um, but that's kind of what I got from Starfield.
There
Like
was a lot of gray in that
yeah,
trailer.
and even the gunplay just looked uninspired and boring,
I mean,
which is
it looked to me mostly pulled from Fallout, and I don't know.
even the outposts. Like you can make outposts and hire people to run your outposts. I just really hope that when the people are playing them, they don't have to tell them, "Hey, here's a gun, here's some ammo. Oh, I have to tell you to use them,
Yeah, I mean,
otherwise you die."
to be
And then I
fair,
wasted all this time on this outpost.
we've gotten this is the first bits of information. We're still a
Yeah,
year probably away from this game. Really, like they say it was. They're saying spring, but I don't know if spring
yeah,
is going to be unless
I,
they start to really roll out that marketing campaign.
yeah.
It may be next fall.
I'm immediately people were turning to No Man's Sky
Yeah.
as like the comparison to Starfield, and it's much more vibrant, much more colorful.
Well,
There's
No
so
Man's
much to
Sky's had a
do.
3 year head start on them too.
Yeah,
And
true.
to be fair, No Man's Sky almost died a very horrible death. Um,
Yeah, I mean it definitely didn't deliver on everything at launch, but they've done a lot of like free updates and stuff, and like it has gotten to what they promised.
yeah.
But so I'm still holding out some hope for Starfield. It's just for the first like
Yeah,
actual.
you have to give them a little bit of time. This is the first bit of information, and it's hard, especially because this is going to be a huge game. This is going to be a game people are spending hundreds of hours in. So there's going to be a
Yeah,
ton of stuff. You know, they say there's 1,000 planets to explore. Some of them are going to be filled to the brim with stuff. Some of them are going to be barren, and that's fine. That makes sense. I mean,
yeah,
not every planet that you're going to go to, and that's good for
yeah.
pacing too. Because if you go to every planet and every planet is just filled to the brim with things to fight and things to do, you're going to get bored real quick. So you need to have that. What's coming next? Is this planet going to be cool? Oh, there's nothing here. Fine, whatever. Leave. Go to the next planet.
I'm not as excited for Starfield as I was going into this show, which is I don't know. Maybe my expectations weren't as in check as I thought they
Yeah.
were, but
You have to give it time and just stay cautiously optimistic. I mean,
yeah,
Bethesda updates their games a lot after they come out. That's just a thing they do mostly because it's to fix bugs, but
yeah,
um, it's going to get a lot of content after launch. So
and we'll see plenty of re-releases.
oh yeah,
Uh, 5th year anniversary, 10
10th
year
year, 20th.
anniversary,
Yeah.
the VR edition, the one for the toasters. Like
Hey, if I can play Starfield on my Echo, I'll do it.
I mean, I mean, they've pushed Skyrim to so many different platforms. Um, like they've got the experience of doing that. Uh, what so kind of jumping back to the announcement of the announcements. What do you think of them already mentioning that Fallout 5 is going to be after Elder Scrolls 6, which is after Starfield?
I mean, it's a no-brainer. That's just
Like,
that's the rotation. That's how Bethesda works. I mean, it's in pre-production. They're already starting ideas. We
yeah,
know that that's going to be a thing. You're not going to see that game anytime soon. That game is 10 years
yeah,
away at
yeah.
least.
Like
So there's no
before,
need for them to say a thing. Not
yeah,
one word about the next Fallout game.
yeah.
We know it's going to come. It'll be 10 years from now, and we'll complain between now and then. But
I,
you know
I,
Bethesda's going to do Fallout.
as far as my disappointments, that was, Starfield was definitely the my most or my biggest disappointment. I don't know if Dragon Quest or no Dragon Quest stuff was necessarily yours, but outside of that, was there anything that really just maybe not deflated your excitement, but you know anything that was a disappointment for you?
Uh, I mean, the only thing that was really a sort of a disappointment is no release date for Silk Song, but
Oh yeah,
but
they finally showed it.
it's coming to Game Pass. It'll be a Game Pass day one launch. It's also coming to Switch. So I'm still in the middle of the first Hollow Knight. I haven't finished that. Hopefully, I get that one finished before Silk Song comes out. But I will be playing that one, and I know my son will be playing that as well because he plays Hollow Knight pretty much every day. Um, so
Well,
that was maybe the biggest disappointment. But I didn't go into it expecting a lot of stuff. Like Nintendo is the one that I get usually really hyped for, and even then I try really hard to keep my expectations in check. So going
we
into
we
this
know how
one,
you are.
there were some things I'd like to see, some things I knew I was going to see. So I wasn't super disappointed. I mean, it's a lot of shooters, but that is expected with Microsoft and Sony. That's the big thing that they do is that type of
Yeah,
game. If we end up not getting a direct in June, that's going to be my biggest disappointment for the E3
yeah.
season. Because that is the thing I look forward to the most every year is what is Nintendo bringing us for the rest, for the best half of the year, I guess.
Yeah. Even though like the first half of 2022 has just
Oh, it's been great.
been like so many games. I mean, kicking the year off with Pokemon Legends Arceus, and then you had like Elden Ring and Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 and like
We just had the new
uh,
TMNT game drop today. I have played through half of that already. That is a fantastic video game.
that
Everybody should play it.
that's that's a game that I'm gonna have to somehow
It's
squeeze
free
into
on Game
the.
Pass. It's only 2 hours long. So
Oh,
if you
really?
if
Oh,
you
okay.
only want to play through it one time, just pick a character, play through it. It's like 2 hours long.
That's I'm
So
probably gonna try to get some game time in with that on probably Saturday. Maybe do a stream with it.
I think that might be our pre-show game on Saturday is TMNT with the procedurally generated and the old Nintendo Oki guys. So
Let us know in the comments what you think of the Microsoft showcase, the Capcom showcase, the the milking of Final Fantasy VII. Um, if you're more excited for Ever Crisis than Rebirth or whatever they're calling the part two of the Final Fantasy VII thing that they're now making a trilogy and into Square Enix. Let us know in the comments. We will be back with another episode of GamerVision. We've got procedurally generated. You guys are streaming all sorts of stuff on Wednesdays and Saturdays,
yep,
and I, I, I got a little tidbit that you guys are possibly working on bringing the podcast back
back to
to the old
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yep, yep.
So be checking out for things like that in the future. I will try to get as many links and graphics and stuff together to get people in all the different directions and stuff everywhere. We will see you with the next episode of GamerVision here on YouTube. See ya.
Bye everybody.